The first alarm hit so hard it felt like it came through my ribs, not the ceiling. 1 second I was at a terminal in Bay 3 checking a stubborn sensor loop, and the next there was a sharp tone, red lights over the access frames, and 3 different people talking at once through the overhead system like nobody had agreed who was in charge. Then the doors locked. Not all of them. That was the worst part. Some sections sealed, some stayed open, and some started cycling like the system couldn't decide what kind of emergency we were even in. My screen dumped 2 warnings, then froze, then came back with half the network map missing. A supervisor behind me yelled for a status update I didn't have yet. Somebody from operations shouted that a pressure reading had jumped. Security started asking who was still inside the restricted corridor. I was 25, a junior systems tech, which meant I was important only when something stopped working. I grabbed my tablet, ran to the nearest panel, and started checking which faults were real and which ones were just bad reporting. That sounds calm when I say it now. It wasn't. Everyone around me was keyed up, stepping over each other, throwing out guesses, repeating numbers like louder meant smarter. One manager kept saying we had a cascade. Another said it was isolated. A guard was trying to get a clean head count while 2 engineers argued over whether the lockdown had made the whole thing worse. What I figured out after about 8 minutes that felt like 40 was that one damaged interface had kicked out garbage signals and the system had reacted like 3 separate failures were happening at once. The doors weren't crazy. They were following bad instructions. Same with 2 alarm zones and 1 ventilation flag. I patched around the failed node with a temporary reroute, got one of the senior guys to verify it, and then pushed the update. The alarms didn't stop all at once. They died in pieces. First 1 corridor unlocked. Then the warning lights over loading access went dark. Then the panel in front of me cleared until only the original fault stayed on screen like the one honest thing left in the building. Nobody thanked me, which was normal. The shouting just changed flavor. Now it was reports, blame, procedure, who logged what, who approved what. My hands were still shaking, but the part where they needed me was mostly over. I stayed another hour helping document the workaround and checking that the lock sequence had reset cleanly. By the time I finally signed out, it was late enough that the parking lot had that empty, cold look where every sound seems bigger than it should. I should have gone straight home. Instead, I stood outside the building for a minute just breathing. Like maybe if I waited long enough my heartbeat would stop acting like I was still inside. My head was hot, my shoulders hurt, and I had that drained feeling where you're exhausted but too wired to sit still. There was a small 24-hour place a few blocks from the site where night shift people stopped for coffee. So I drove there without really deciding to. It was nearly empty. Bright counters, low music, 1 tired cashier, a guy in work boots staring at his phone. I ordered coffee I didn't need and leaned against the pickup side waiting for it. That was when I noticed her. She was standing near the window with a teacup in both hands. Dressed simple but sharp, dark coat. Hair pinned back loosely like she hadn't needed a mirror to get it right. She looked calm in a way that almost annoyed me at first, just because I'd come from 90 minutes of noise and stress and she looked untouched by the idea that anything in the world could rush her. She caught me looking. Usually that's the part where both people pretend it didn't happen. She didn't. She held my eyes for a second, then gave me this small, knowing smile like she already had something figured out about me. "You look like you just walked out of a very bad night," she said. Her voice was low and even. No fake brightness. No awkwardness. I laughed once and rubbed the back of my neck. "That obvious?" "A little." She tipped her head toward the coffee counter. "You have that stare people get when their body is tired and their brain still thinks it's in a hallway full of alarms." That stopped me for a second, because that was exactly it. "Do I know you?" I asked. She smiled again, not offended. "No, you just have a readable face." The cashier called my order, but I didn't move right away. I asked if she worked nights too. She said sometimes. Her name was May. She didn't rush through anything she said. She looked directly at me when I spoke, like I was worth full attention. That alone was enough to throw me off. Most days at work I felt like part of the furniture unless something broke. With her, in under a minute, I felt seen in a way that was hard to explain and even harder not to want more of. I took my coffee and she asked if I was going straight home. I said probably, but not like I meant it. She noticed that too. Then sit for 5 minutes, she said. You look like someone who shouldn't be alone with his thoughts just yet. It was bold. Not aggressive. Just direct enough that I felt it. So I sat. We talked for maybe 20 minutes. Nothing huge. Work in vague terms. Night schedules. Bad sleep. City traffic. The kind of conversation that should have been forgettable, except it wasn't. Every time I said something half-serious, she caught the real part of it immediately. Every time I expected a polite nod, she gave me something sharper, warmer, more personal. When I finally left, the adrenaline crash had eased, but something else had taken its place. I sat in my car with the engine off, looking at her number in my phone like I'd picked it up in a dream. All the chaos from the facility should have been the thing I kept replaying. It wasn't. It was the way May had looked at me, calm and certain, like meeting me right then had not been random at all. I didn't expect May to text me the next morning, mostly because women like her usually did not leave me sitting around with that much hope and then actually follow through. But around 10, while I was still half awake on my couch with cold coffee on the table, my phone lit up. You looked less tense when you left. That means I did my job. I stared at it longer than I should have, then typed back something safe, then deleted it, then sent something a little better. That turned into a full conversation before noon. By the time the day was over, we already had a plan to meet again. That should have been the first thing that felt unusual. Not bad, just unusual. Nothing in my life ever moved that smoothly. We met 3 nights later at a small noodle place across town. Nothing fancy, just warm light, close tables, quiet enough to talk without leaning in. She got there before me. Of course she did. May always seemed like the kind of person who arrived exactly when she meant to. No rush, no mess, no apology story. I was still in work clothes, trying not to look like I had come straight from a long shift, and she noticed right away. You really do live there, don't you? She said with a smile. Feels like it. And nobody there knows how useful you are. She said it like it was obvious. Like she had known me longer than one late coffee and a day of messages. That was what got me with her. May didn't flatter in a loud way. She said things that landed right in the place I usually kept quiet. At work, I was the guy people called when a panel stopped responding or a system started acting weird. Useful, yes. Important, no. Easy to forget once the lights stayed on. With her, I felt picked out. Not by accident. On purpose. Dinner ran long. Then another dinner happened 2 days later. Then a walk after she said she didn't feel like going home yet. Then coffee again. After that, I stopped pretending I was trying to play it cool. We were seeing each other regularly, and fast. Faster than anything I was used to. I knew her favorite tea, the way she tucked one loose strand of hair back when she was listening, the exact look she gave me right before saying something too direct for me to ignore. She asked good questions too. Not just the fake getting to know you kind. She wanted details. What part of my day drained me the most? Who at work talked too much? Whether I liked solving problems or just being the one people needed when things failed. She listened like my answers mattered. Sometimes she asked about my schedule in a way that felt casual. Are you still on those long evening shifts? Depends on the week. Busy phase right now? Yeah, more than usual. She nodded and moved on. Nothing strange about that. Not then. The strange part came from everywhere else. 2 days after our second dinner, my badge failed at the side entrance I used almost every day. I scanned once, got a red blink, waited, tried again. Same result. The guard inside the glass booth checked his screen, frowned, then buzzed me in manually. Probably a sync issue, he said. That happens sometimes, so I let it go. Then my team lead asked if I had borrowed a calibrated driver set from the lock cabinet. I hadn't. One was missing anyway. We spent 15 minutes checking benches and carts before another tech found it on the wrong floor. That also could happen. People moved too fast, grabbed the wrong case, forgot where they set things down. Then security asked me to stop by for routine clarification about the lockdown night from the week before. Routine clarification never feels routine when 2 people are watching your face too closely. They asked where I had been minute by minute, who I spoke to after the alarms stopped. whether anyone approached me outside my normal work chain, whether I had noticed unknown vehicles near the employee lot. I answered everything cleanly because I had nothing to hide, but I walked out with that stale feeling in my stomach you get when a conversation sounds normal on paper and wrong in the room. That same evening, on my way out, I noticed a dark sedan parked across from the secondary gate. Maybe I had seen it before, maybe not. What bothered me was not the car itself. It was that I had the thought at all. Later that night, May and I were sitting in her apartment, shoes off, takeout containers open on the coffee table, her leg folded under her like she had known me for months instead of days. I told her work had been weird. Still fallout from that system mess? She asked. Yeah, and everybody's tense. She looked at me over her cup. That means you're probably busier now than before. A little. More access too, I guess. When things get sensitive, they lean on the people who can actually fix things. The line slid past so smoothly I barely reacted. I just shrugged and said something about doing whatever was in front of me. But later, driving home, it came back to me. Not because it was a huge question, because it was a precise one. And by then I already liked her enough to do what people do when they do not want a good thing ruined. I told myself I was overthinking it. Then I checked my mirror at a red light and saw that same dark sedan 3 cars behind me. Maybe it was nothing. I remember gripping the wheel anyway. By that point, I was too far in with May to pretend I was keeping a clear head. I was seeing her almost every week, sometimes more. Not in a dramatic, all-day, can't breathe without you way. It was quieter than that, which somehow got to me more. She'd text near the end of my shift and ask if I had eaten. She'd remember small things I said without making a show of it. She knew when I was tired just from the way I answered the phone. Being with her felt easy in a part of my life that usually felt all hard edges, bad lighting, and somebody needing something fixed right away. The first night I stayed over, it didn't feel reckless. Felt natural. That was the problem. We had dinner at her place, ended up on the couch talking longer than we meant to, and somewhere in the middle of laughing about one of my coworkers, everything changed without either of us naming it first. After that, lying there with her close to me and the apartment quiet around us, I remember thinking how fast trust can build when someone gives you exactly the version of calm you've been missing. The next morning she made tea like it was the most normal thing in the world that I was there, barefoot in her kitchen, half awake, watching steam rise from the cups. She looked over her shoulder and asked, "Busy day?" "Always." "Same section as last week?" I should have caught it then. Not because it was some huge, flashing warning. Just because she had started asking questions with a little more shape to them. "Mostly," I said. "Late again?" "Probably." She nodded once, handed me the cup, and kissed me like the conversation had not mattered at all. At work, things got tighter. Another system issue hit less than 2 weeks after the first one. Not as loud, not full lockdown, but bad enough to drag half the floor into a rush. A set of diagnostics started feeding nonsense values into one of the control clusters, and for 20 ugly minutes nobody trusted what was real and what was noise. I was in a service corridor with a panel open, tracing a connection fault with one senior engineer over my shoulder and another guy talking in my earpiece too fast to follow. We got it under control, but not before internal oversight showed up on the floor. That alone changed the mood. People stood straighter. Jokes stopped. Even the managers lowered their voices. Later that day, I got stopped outside a restricted access point by a man I'd only seen once before. He had one of those plain faces that somehow made him stand out more, like he had trained the expression out of himself. "You were near Bay 2 during the earlier event," he said. "Yeah. And near Control Annex during today's fault. I go where they send me." He held my badge for a second longer than necessary before giving it back. "Has anyone taken unusual interest in your hours? Your access? Your project load?" There was a tiny pause there. Tiny but real. I said no. The answer came too fast. I hated that I heard it myself. That evening I called May from my car. No answer. I tried again an hour later. Nothing. That had never happened before. She always answered, or at least sent a quick message. I told myself she was busy, asleep, in the shower, out with friends, anything normal. Still, I checked my phone so many times that night it got embarrassing even alone. She texted the next morning like nothing had happened. Sorry. Fell asleep early. Long day. I wanted to leave it there. I almost did. But something in me had started keeping count. That night we met for a drink, and she was warm, easy, right back in rhythm with me. She touched my wrist while I was talking, smiled at the right moments, asked about work with that same relaxed tone. So last night was one of your late ones? Yeah. Were you stuck on site the whole time? Mostly. Mostly. I gave her a look. You ask that like you're building a schedule. She smiled, but it came a fraction late. Maybe I just like knowing where you are. That should have sounded sweet. Instead it sat wrong in my chest. 2 days later, I had the worst moment yet. I was carrying a diagnostic case down a corridor that led near one of the more controlled sections when a door ahead opened before I got there. Not all the way, just enough that I saw someone step back out of view. Then it closed again. My badge log later showed an access attempt tied close to my route, close enough that I got called in to explain why I had been near that area at that time. I hadn't entered. I hadn't even touched the panel. Still, I sat in a bare office with 2 people asking careful questions while one of them watched my face more than my answers. When I left, my mouth was dry and my nerves felt like exposed wire. I texted May without thinking. Can I come by? She replied 10 minutes later. Tonight isn't good. Tomorrow. That hit me harder than it should have. Not because she owed me anything. Because I suddenly needed her to be where I thought she was in my life. And for the first time I wasn't sure. On the drive home, I saw the dark sedan again. Same shape. Same dull color. Parked half a block from my building with the lights off. I kept driving past it, circled once, then came back slower. By then it was gone. That was the moment the whole pattern stopped feeling like random stress. I still didn't understand it. But for the first time, I started to think May might not just be standing next to the strange parts of my life. She might be inside them. I found out the truth in under 30 seconds. That was the part that stayed with me later. Not how complicated it was. How fast it broke open once it finally did. It happened 3 nights after I saw the sedan outside my building. I was still going to work, still answering questions carefully, still pretending to myself that I had not started measuring every conversation with May for hidden meaning. We had seen each other once since then. She was affectionate, relaxed, almost extra gentle with me, which only made it worse. I kept waiting for one clean sign that would prove I was being stupid. Instead, I got something much bigger. I was leaving the facility late, not as late as the lockdown night, but late enough that the employee lot was thinning out. The air had that cold, flat feel it gets near midnight. I had just stepped off the curb when 2 dark vehicles rolled in too fast for normal site traffic and stopped near the outer security lane. Doors opened right away. Not guards in the usual sense. Plain clothes, fast movement, no wasted motion. At first I thought something had happened inside again. Then I saw May. She was near the far end of the lot, walking toward the visitor side gate in a dark coat, one hand on her bag strap, moving with that same calm pace I had always noticed about her. For half a second my brain refused to connect the scene. She was not supposed to be there. She had never come to the site. At least not when I knew about it. Someone called out to her. Sharp. Official. She didn't run. She turned once, and even from that distance I knew the moment she saw me. I felt it. Her face changed, but only slightly. Not panic. Not surprise. More like resignation. Like a door closing. Then 3 people were on her. They pinned her arms, took the bag, turned her toward the vehicle. Everything happened in this hard, controlled rush that made regular security look slow. One of the men near me told me to step back. I did, but I couldn't stop staring. May looked over once more while they moved her. No shouting. No plea. No explanation. Just that one look, direct and unreadable, and then she was inside the car. I think I said her name. I'm not even sure. The next part was worse because it was quiet. They took me into a conference room I had only seen from the outside. No windows. One table. One folder already waiting there, which meant this had been ready before I walked in. A man I recognized from internal oversight sat across from me with another person I had never seen before. She did most of the talking. They did not tell me everything. They didn't need to. May was not random. She had been tied to an ongoing effort to collect information around the project. Not blueprints stuffed in a bag. Not some movie version of it. Smaller things. Access habits. Response timing. Staffing patterns. Technical weak points. Who got called where during system faults. Who could be approached without drawing attention. That was why the questions had felt so harmless while still sticking in my mind later. They were harmless one by one. Together they were a map. I sat there numb while they walked me through enough details to make me sick. The coffee place after the lockdown night? Not chance. She had been nearby because that whole incident had triggered movement and interest around the site. My name had surfaced early because I was useful in emergencies but low profile the rest of the time. Easy to talk to. Easy to underestimate. The badge problems, the missing tool, the repeated sedan, the questions from security, the second system incident, the access point scare near my route. None of it had been random. Some of it had been monitoring. Some of it had been pressure. Some of it had been attempts to learn how the place bent when it was stressed. And me? I had been one of the bends. I asked if she had ever meant any of it. Came out before I could stop it, which was humiliating even then. The woman across from me held my eyes for a second before answering. She used a real connection to get real access. That's all we can say. That answer wrecked me more than a clean lie would have. Because it left room. Room for the way May remembered small things about me. Room for the softness in her apartment. Room for the nights that felt too personal to be fake and too convenient to be innocent. I wanted the story split cleanly into true and false. Instead, I got the version that made everything line up and still solved nothing. When they finally let me leave, the parking lot was nearly empty. I sat in my car with both hands on the wheel, thinking about every time I had told myself I was being paranoid, every time I had chosen attraction over discomfort, every time I had ignored how perfectly she had appeared right after the worst night of my month. I used to think I had just gotten unlucky, that I met the wrong woman at the wrong time. But that was not what happened. The truth was harder than that. I was never just a guy who stumbled into trouble. I was useful to it. Ever felt like you were just a tool in someone else's game? Tell me your story below.